I went through the best part of a bottle of whiskey to myself one night towards the end of it feeling very problematic. Just thought, right, I simply cannot carry on like this. Just stopped. After about 4 days, 3 days, I felt my whole life change. Like it was unbelievable. This 30 marathons in 30 days that I'm doing, you can't play with what I'm currently attempting. Like unless your body is ready and your mind is ready, you will fail.
This episode is supported by Huel.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real pleasure for me, by the way. Love the show and delighted to be here.
Thank you very much. We're delighted to have you. What do you believe high performance to be, Spencer?
Achieving large goals, I suppose. Setting yourself goals that might feel out of reach and managing to achieve those. Doing it with a smile on your face, maybe. And just generally feeling content, I suppose, as well, you know, whilst you perform. I think if you perform to what you believe to be a high level, but it's at the detriment of your health or your mental health or your family or loved ones, then is it really high performance? In my particular case, I think setting yourself new goals and achieving the goals that you set yourself feels like you're on a good trajectory, a good journey. And as long as you're growing, I think you're probably performing.
Very good. So let's talk about the large goals then, the big ambitious targets. By the time people watch or listen to this, you're going to be in the midst of your Great Desert Challenge, which is 30 marathons in 30 days on sand, which I believe will be a world record. What would the temperature be?
At the height of the day, it'll be about 48 degrees. We'll try and avoid that, obviously. In the middle of the night, at its coolest, it'll be 29 degrees. So still pretty hot. 29, 30, as I'm sure you know, is kind of like a hot beach holiday. There'll be no exposure to UV at that time, which makes a difference, but it'll be hot.
So the simple question is why?
I've done a few ultras before. I come from an alcoholic background where I felt pretty ashamed and disappointed in myself for, you know, extended periods of time. And so, you know, I began a personal journey of growth, I suppose, and you know, internal development a few years ago. I kicked alcohol to the curb completely for just short of 4 years. And in that time was able to kind of really change my perspective on a lot of things, you know, drive, business, achievement, success. And in that time was able to do a few ultras, Marathon des Sables, the Ice Ultra, which unfortunately I was pulled out of because of COVID, all the way up in Arctic Sweden. Getting back was a pain. And then the Amazon Ultra, all of which are about 250 kilometers, 5-day stage races, and found in them just a lot of change and found them to be quite transformational experiences that I remember incredibly fondly, despite them being pretty brutal at times. And a lot of people who are kind enough to show interest in this challenge are asking me why, and there's two sides to it. So it's a personal thing to look to see how far I can go to compete with myself, essentially, and you know, test those limits. And there's a charitable element to this as well. I've teamed up with Global's Make Some Noise, which are a charity within Global, that has, you know, a lot more reach than I would have just doing this on my own. So looking to raise as much money as possible to make a difference for small charities in the UK that focus mostly on homelessness, loneliness, bereavement, mental and physical health. You know, lots of work with children. And I've met some of these families, and they're just, you know, they don't deserve a lot of the misfortune that has come their way, and anything we can do to help, we'd be happy to do it. So,
well done.
Thank you.
Tell us about the moment where you said you kind of grew, like something happened when you were competing. I'm really interested in what you felt.
There was a moment in the Marathon des Sables on the fourth day, which is it's an 82 kilometer day, so it's, you know, just shy of a double marathon. Temperatures that year in 2021 were in the high 40s, so it's a bit higher than it ordinarily would be. The race had been cancelled for 2 years because of COVID, and so they were just keen to get something going. And you just really had to dig deep on that day in particular. You're 4 days in, you've covered 110, 120 kilometers already. You're quite depleted, tired. It's a self-sufficient race, so you're carrying everything on you, all your food for the week, 6 days, all your sleeping equipment. And there was this large kind of mountain about 60k in, and it was just a real hard slog, mate. I don't really know how else to describe it. It was just a really tough, the desire to give up was incredibly real. I met a guy at the base of the hill. You don't really help people, by the way, not out of choice. You're busy looking after yourself in these things normally, right? And so it's quite rare to come across someone that would be very kind with their time, because it's a race at the end of the day. And this guy helped me out. He prepared a meal for me, right? So he saw me, I was in a bit of spot of bother.
Another competitor?
Yeah.
Yep.
Just a guy managing his own race. He got a meal out for me, prepared it for me, gave it to me, sat with me, and then helped me up this mountain. It took about an hour and a half to climb the mountain. When we got to the top of the mountain, you got another 20k to do. So you're nowhere near finished, by the way. And we got to the top of the mountain, and the guy, I hadn't even asked his name, right? We were just kind of like cruising along with each other. And I said to him at the top of the mountain, I was like, well, by the way, what's your name? And he said, Michael. And I had a brother that I lost on Everest called Michael. And it kind of felt in that moment like my Michael was kind of helping me out in some way up this mountain that I'm pretty sure I may not have, I might have had to have spent the night at the base of it and all kinds of stuff. But I got over the mountain, and I just found it peculiar that this guy would be called Michael, and never saw him again actually afterwards. Didn't even see him in camp or anything. And it was it felt like an unusual thing for me. Also recently learnt about this thing called thin space. I was filming a show for the BBC called Pilgrimage, and it's thin space is said to be that space between Earth and heaven or the afterlife. It might be a beautiful sunset or something really incredible that you see that touches you in some way, or a gust of wind on the back of your neck or something if you're thinking of someone that's passed away or something like that. Something that feels unusual in the moment. And these events are full of that. These desert events and these ultras, when you're depleted and exhausted, you get a sense of not being alone even when you are alone. And I suppose it makes me feel closer to my brother as well. He was an adventurer, lost his life unfortunately on Everest when he was 22 and I was 10. And there's an element of wanting to make him proud in all of this as well. And it's full of moments like that. These events, particularly when you're feeling low and exhausted, there are moments of extreme beauty in it all. I don't see it as grim and an uphill challenge. I see it as a kind of experience that will live with me forever.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting. We spoke to Kevin Sinfield, who has done these ultramarathons in aid of Rob Burrow, who said that one of the huge pieces of advice that had helped him was that when you're at your most exhausted, everything seems 60% worse. So that helped him in the dark moments to go, this isn't as bad as what my mind is convincing me. I'm interested in, you said that you've learned to spot the beauty in those moments rather than perceive it as grim. Mm. Has that been learned? And if so, how have you managed to do that?
Did you know that less than half of Brits eat breakfast every day of the week? I mean, that's amazing. But why? Well, it's because we're all time poor, especially in the mornings. So we compromise. My fix is Huel's nutritionally complete high-protein shake, a complete meal in a bottle that slots perfectly into my life. Head to the link in the description for a free t-shirt on your first order with Huel. How can you resist that?
It kind of comes from a lack of choice as well. Like the races that I've done so far, pulling out of them when you feel like pulling out would actually be quite a difficult thing to do. All right, like you're isolated in these things, and particularly in the Amazon, you can feel like you're on your own. there are other competitors there, but the people in front of you are typically faster, the people behind you are typically slower, so you're often not with either of them, right? You're on your own. And what's kind of keeling over and whinging going to do to help the situation? It's kind of like you have to carry on. Obviously, things can go wrong and people can get badly hurt or, in some cases die. There were 2 deaths in the 2021 Marathon des Sables that I was involved with. And it's a sobering experience, right? It's a kind of like, that this is dangerous and requires, your full attention, cooperation, and you need to listen to your body. But you can often feel isolated when you do it. This is different, this 30 marathons in 30 days that I'm doing. This is a supported race. I'm surrounded by professionals. I've got a doctor with me at all times, my running coach, somebody to look after fueling and food and, a support team. It's a world first. It's 5 times the length of the Marathon des Sables. But it's supported. So I'm not trekking around with tons of stuff, gear on my back. I can get into a zone here and just cover some kilometers,
So how much would you say then, if we base it on your Marathon des Sables experience, is about the physical duress that you're able to withstand, and how much of it is about the mental game of being able to be comfortable with the discomfort?
I think the time that you're immersed in it makes a big difference to that. And it's a good question. I think a very resilient person who's gritty and determined can pull themselves through a 5-day event. Obviously, you need a level of physicality to it as well. But, I think you can't play with what I'm currently attempting. Like, unless your body is ready and your mind is ready, you will fail. There's no room really for error or shooting from the hip or taking any unnecessary risks. This is a very controlled, thing that we're monitoring in a very specific way.
I'm intrigued by a concept that I remember reading in Oliver Burkeman. Have you read his book, The Antidote?
I've not, unfortunately.
Well, he talks about a lot of the stuff that we often prescribe, like positive thinking. And he goes, positive thinking is useful in small doses, but not too much of it, because then you become deluded. But he talks about one idea called goal idiocy, where he talks about some people become so fixated on achieving a target that they almost then become so tunnel vision, they miss the obvious things. And when you made that comment there about some people died doing that Marathon des Sables, that was the idea that came into my head of like goal idiocy, of being that desperate to achieve it. You ignore the warning signs that your body's going, you need to just stop here, or you've done enough. And I'm interested in, how do you set such an ambitious goal like what you do in the 30 and 30, while at the same time accepting that there's other factors that are going to be really important?
I think as a father now, I have a different view on that. If I'm in a position that feels even remotely life-threatening, just stop, Also, I feel incredibly prepared for what's coming, right? I have some experience in the desert. I understand what it's going to be. I've been training pretty relentlessly in a heat chamber, which I'd love to, I could bore you for the entire interview about the heat chamber, because it's actually really fascinating, but I'll try and make it really quick. It's at the University of London South Bank, and it's 50 degrees Celsius, 20% humidity, and there's one of those treadmills in it that doesn't, you can't program it yourself. It's like a hamster wheel. You churn it out. It actually feels harder than running on a road. And you go in for 2-hour blocks, and you try and run continuously for 2 hours in this environment that's like, it's really full on, and if you get it wrong, and the whole aim of the game in the heat chamber is your heart rate's being monitored, and so is your internal temperature. So they come in every kind of 10, 15 minutes, and they'll zap you in the ear with one of those things, the children's thermometer thing that you use on babies. And the idea is to try to get your temperature level and your heart rate level for the whole 2-hour period. And when you first do it, it's like, you feel really comfortable initially because it hasn't hit yet. And then 20 minutes in, it's like, your heart rate starts soaring, your temperature goes, ballistic, and then, you simply can't carry on, and you've got to come out the thing and, take 5 minutes, go back in, and it happens again, and you're like, and, the doctor there, who's incredible, Dr. Freya, she's just like, the idea is you need to become comfortable, teach yourself how to keep your temperature level, heart rate level. So you start, toning it down a bit and breathing differently, and you work your way into a position where you can do the full 2 hours. And I'm there with that. I've got 2 hours this evening. You quite look forward to it in a weird, sadistic way now, because it's fun, because you're getting better at it, right? So it's kind of like anything. Like, people, I don't think, love running until they get comfortable running. It's like this heat chamber. I really didn't like it. I don't shy away from anything ordinarily. I try to never give up on anything. And I was completely crushed by this thing after an hour. And I was thinking in my head, how do I come up with an excuse to not do the second hour without sounding weak, basically? And I kind of came out and wanted to use the bathroom, and she was like, no. And it came out, and I used the bathroom, came out, and I was like, I'm running a half, tomorrow, so I might just do an hour for this first one. And she's like, no, you've got to get back in. And I was like, and I was just coming up with all these excuses, and I was like, this is not me, So I got back in it, and then it became a bit easier. But it's quite a fascinating thing to learn, because the heat thing is what will pull you out of the race.
When I hear you talk like this, though, I think back to previous interviews I've listened to you. You've been on loads, and they're brilliant. I loved the Elizabeth Day conversation from 18 months ago, or wherever, on how to fail, where you were talking about being a pretty unspectacular young person, right? I don't understand how you've gone from that unspectacular teen to this guy that is pushing himself to the limit, doing ultra marathons. We'll talk about your reality TV career in a bit. We'll talk about Clean Co in a bit. There's all these amazing things going on. You're a father, you're a dad. When did all of this suddenly happen for you? Where's that kid?
I never cared enormously about performance when I was younger. At school never, it sounds silly, but school never felt that important to me. It just sounds a strange thing to say, because obviously I'd like my children to take school seriously, and of course school is important, but even from a young age, I can remember thinking, what actually happens if I don't do well at school? And surely you can just pick all the topics that you love. And the British schooling system, not that I'm having any impact on trying to change that, is a kind of strange thing, because you end up doing a bunch of subjects you don't love or don't really care about, and you learn a bunch of stuff to just regurgitate it in an exam, and that somehow defines how intelligent you are, even though, in my opinion, most people can, make notes and read something and regurgitate it under exam conditions and then forget about it. If you ask me for 10 facts that I learned in history at school, I wouldn't be able to give you any, so I don't really, I always saw it as a bit of a chore, really.
But you had this high-achieving dad who was a self-made success story. You had two older brothers who were doing incredible. If school didn't inspire you, why did that not inspire you?
I don't know. I do think that the relationship with alcohol was certainly a consideration, because I kind of grew up thinking that anything was possible. I always had that mindset as a kid, that whatever I want to be, I can be, and that's probably. Is it good parenting? I don't know what that is, but I grew up feeling like I was enough and I could achieve stuff. And if I wanted to be the CEO of a big business, I can be that. And if I want to be a sports guy, I can be a sports guy. Sports guy is a bad example, because I was not particularly talented at sport. But I've always felt that stuff was within reach, and I suppose that's because I come from a position of privilege and whatever. But I also felt like we had an awesome family in which anything was possible, and I grew up with that mentality. The relationship with booze was a big detriment to me, and it became. This isn't just a few drinks having a bit of fun. I would drink really early in the day, pretty regularly.
What sort of age?
I would drink pretty heavily from the age of 15, 16, whilst at school, for sure.
And were you at boarding school?
Yeah.
Because when I was reading about boarding schools, I was reading, there is actually something called the boarding school syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's about the ABC, that for young people...
Here we go.
Do I have this, or...
Well, no.
We think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You are going to have some medication for this.
Okay.
No,
Heights.
No, I'm interested in there's a concept that talks about the ABC of it. So when you go to boarding school, for some people, there's a sense of abandonment from the family unit. There's some people that go through a sense of bereavement. the idea that they're on their own. Others talk about feeling captive, as if they've got no choice in it, they've been sent there. And then the fourth one is this sense of disassociation. And
that's the D, is it?
Yeah. And when you're describing the idea of school didn't really matter to me, I wasn't sure at the point of it, I'm hearing the D bit come through, that disassociation of why am I here? What's the significance of this? And I'm just interested in exploring what you think the boarding school experience both gave you, but what it also took from you.
I was never naturally academically gifted. So when you get thrust into a situation like Eton, where getting straight A's is a given for everyone,
right,
that's tough for me, because like I can't, just do a few terms of biology and, get 98% in my exams like everybody else around me. Like, so I felt quite stupid going through Eton, right? And I'm not a stupid person, but I felt kind of silly at Eton because my work ethic probably wasn't what it could have been. Most people took their studies and, homework and stuff far more seriously than I did. I was far more interested in sport and the social side of things and drinking and having a good time and just enjoying myself and, trying my best to be popular, right? And I think loads of people would relive their schooling, if they could, I'd go back in time and do it differently. I had a great time, by the way. Like I really, really enjoyed my time at Eton, had an awesome time. But the academic side of things was always quite rough for me. I relied on the fact that I can speak French, right? So French was easy for me. I didn't have to do anything at all to just get A stars and come first in French. No problem, easy. So that's great. I was always quite arty. So art was another topic of mine. Perfect. My mum's an artist. I've always drawn. I love art. And then, drama, had to learn a bit about Stanislavski, but really enjoyed it, found it quite fascinating. So, I naturally just gravitated towards the things that I knew I was good at in order to survive academically and get the grades that I needed.
But do you think alcohol was a way of sort of symbolising that I'm not giving it my all here? I don't know if you're familiar. There's a concept that I hear with lots of high achievers called about a French chess player called Deschapelles. And what he used to do was he'd claim he was the best chess player in the world, but he'd only play you if he could put himself at a disadvantage before the game started. So if he beat you, he could then say, look how good I am, because I beat you even when I was at a disadvantage. But if you won, he'd go, yeah, you only won because I was at a disadvantage. And I'm interested in, you've described later on in your career that we'll explore, of you've gone all in and you've literally committed yourself to this task that you're doing now with your business and the other aspects of your career. But at that age, was it a protective mechanism to go, I could be great, but I'm also interested in going on the piss. I'm also interested in pursuing sport. So that's why I'm not top of the class.
Maybe. It kind of sounds like, I've had therapy in the past and just not necessarily because I felt like I needed it, just because I think actually it's a shame that it's stigmatized a bit. And actually I think that having a non-biased conversation with a professional is a great way to learn more about yourself, blow off a bit of steam. Having an unbiased chat with someone that's not a friend or a family member is phenomenal. And you can blame the excessive drinking on all kinds of stuff. I lost my brother when I was 10. Most therapists that I've spoken to will say that would be a massive reason for, drinking to excess. I absolutely despise blaming, that event on my behavior on that event. I don't see the two, getting drunk as a teenager and venting and being angry about what happened, sure, but I don't see my brother's death as the reason for my alcoholism. I like what you just said, actually. I might start using that. The chess player.
Yeah, Deschapelles.
Yeah, Deschapelles.
So I thought it was, you speak French, so you can pronounce it better.
Deschapelles. No, it's interesting though. I don't know. I feel like I feel that larger, and this doesn't go for people who are, clinically alcoholic or, I don't believe I was ever, an alcoholic in that sense, sick, with alcoholism. I think I made bad decisions and I got into bad habits and I didn't have, the balls to pull myself out of it. And it was laziness, I would get drunk regularly and I knew it was wrong, and I was ashamed of it, but I couldn't be bothered to fix it either, you know, and it kind of felt fine at the time, and every so often I'd have a run-in with my family over it, and I'd, you know, I wouldn't bother changing because I would deep down think I was right and I was, you know, in control when I probably wasn't. And it's funny when you've been on both sides of it with the booze thing. Like I'm in a place now where I do drink alcohol, but like I hardly ever feel like drinking alcohol. It's very rare. I feel like I probably have a normal relationship with booze, you know, like kind of the kind of relationship that my mum might have, just like, you know, doesn't really drink, but might have the odd drink from time to time and wake up feeling a bit dusty, and that's it for a few weeks. You know, that's kind of where I am with it. But the difference in life quality for me, like, you know, having made at the age of 35 now, having, you know, paying more attention to health, and wanting to be better has made a massive difference. You know, just a few things, you know, getting better quality sleep, you know, hardly drinking any alcohol, or, you know, being sober, call it 99% of the time. You know, proper food, proper diet, supplementation, regular training. It's all good stuff, you know, that I wish I'd done earlier.
I'm very interested in the sort of family dynamic of going off to boarding school. Like, was it a loving family? Were you open with each other? Were you vulnerable? Was it that kind of a household?
Completely. I mean, not so much vulnerable, no. You know, I got into trouble for saying this, but I'll say it again just because it's good fun. You know, I've said before that I felt that I couldn't really show weakness in front of my father, which isn't strictly true, certainly not nowadays.
You got in trouble with him for saying that?
Yeah, I said it and they printed it and it was like a headline of something that, you know, I grew up in some kind of hard, stern, you know, household. And like that's not true, by the way. Like, we're a very, very loving family. But I can remember as a kid, you know, feeling like, you know, just a small example, like say you fall off your bike and you hurt yourself. If I'm around my dad, had I burst into tears and started crying, there would have been a lot of, you know, crying's not going to help you. You know, what are you doing? You know, crying will help. And, you know, I had that from a very young age, which is fine, by the way. Like, I'm not in any way, I'm a bit like that with my sons, and I probably shouldn't be, but I am. And it was instilled in me at quite a young age, and I think this is a normal northern stuff, right? My dad's from Sheffield, my brothers are from Sheffield. You know, my dad grew up in Rotherham. I was born in Grantham. You know, we're kind of not. Anyway, dad's from Sheffield, right? And like, I think it was pretty normal to have, you know, stiff upper lip upbringing. It's just standard stuff, which I don't see as a bad thing. But yeah, I do remember feeling like any expression of emotion or fear was weak, and I shouldn't be doing it as a kid, right? Like, and I don't, you know, cry, and I don't express much weakness now as a result of it. You know, I feel like people should just get on with stuff, you know, just crack on if you can. I'm certainly that way. If a problem presents itself, I try and handle it, you know, as and when. I don't worry about, you know, stuff prior to things happening. And yeah, you know, particularly around Mike's death, I can remember thinking, I'm not quite sure, like, how I'm supposed to react around this. Are we all super strong now, or like, are we supposed to be mourning and crying, or what are we doing here? You know, and I remember having that feeling when I was 10. But you know, I think my father, by the way, is awesome, right? And he's a great dad, and like I love having the relationship that I have with my dad. So nobody is complaining here. You know, an amazing mother, beautiful family, always been very close. You know, very lucky, very fortunate to have that kind of family dynamic around me. But I think we've always all been quite competitive, and, you know, just we get on with stuff.
So what did you do when you were told that your brother had passed away? What conclusion did you come to about how you should act in that situation?
I think, you know, as a 10-year-old, I was able to navigate it probably less painfully than the rest of the family, right? For them, it was like being, you know, hit by a freight train. You know, Michael's lost on Everest. Okay. You know, to me, that sounded like, well, cool, you know, I'm sure we'll find him. Whereas, you know, to anybody that knew anything about Everest, you know, surviving a night on Everest is incredibly rare, and surviving 2 or 3 has never happened before, right? So it's kind of, you know straight away that, you know, he's in very serious bother or is already dead. As a child, you don't know that. You know, my head's full of Disney cartoons and, you know, other whimsical things that I love. And, you know, again, I still, to some effect, live in Disneyland, right? My brother says that I live in Disney World, you know, because like I have these big ideas that I think are achievable, and I just head out and try and do them. And, you know, he tells me that stuff's impossible, and then of course it's not impossible, and that's a great feeling. But you know, so then I had the assumption that Michael would be found alive. So it never affected me in the way that it could have done had I been more logical and, you know, a more logical thinker, which children aren't usually. You know, even at his memorial service, I was reading, but there was no body. So to me, I was like, well, what's this all about, type thing, you know, like, and, you know, I was told by then very clearly that, you know, Michael's never coming home. And I was just like, you know, it took me a while to process that I would never see him again. Then we went to make Finding Michael, and the realization that I might see him again became quite a stern realization, because again, I hadn't fully processed that. You know, I'm sat there at base camp, I was there for 5 weeks, and I was thinking, you know, if we're successful, I'm going to come face to face with my brother's body, which would be probably perfectly preserved. Yeah. So like I'll be his older brother now. He's frozen in time, you know. He died 12 years older than me. I'd now be 12 years older than him. You know, whole thing would have been a bit of a mindfuck, frankly.
You need to hear this, okay? Your gut matters. It's a vital building block to health. Now, you might not know that 70% of your immune system is in your gut. I didn't know that. And 95% of serotonin, which is the feel-good chemical, is created in your gut. And if there's one thing we need more of, it's a feel-good chemical, right? That's why when it came to choosing a probiotic, I had to know it was proven and that I could fully trust it. And this is it. Biotic by Heights, specifically formulated to give you everything you need for your gut, your mind, and your immune system. I take it every day, and the difference for me is real. And you could trust me, fine, cool. Or you could trust the tens of thousands of high performers and elite athletes that rely on Biotic every day. So join tens of thousands of high performers and try Heights with an exclusive 20% off your first month, only with this podcast. Go to heights.com/HP or enter the code HP20 at checkout. You'll love it.
We didn't find him in the end, spoiler alert. Yeah.
What did your parents think about you going on that search?
They were quite supportive of it, providing we were considerate of risk to other human life and just, you know, and operated with care and proper people, basically. You know, Bear Grylls was very kind to executive produce and come on board quite early. And put us in touch with, you know, great people. And I think when around the time that Disney became interested, I think everyone was a bit more, you know, relaxed about the whole thing.
Can I ask a question that I'm conscious it can come across as crass, but it's picking up some of the themes that you've asked, that you've just shared with us? That you described you were a competitive family, and you've lost a brother at 22. How much of what you're doing now is competing with somebody that isn't there? You know, like your brother can never fail, your brother can never grow old, your brother can never make mistakes. So you're almost competing against somebody that's perfect or perfectly preserved in the memory of your family.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I do think Mike plays a part in all of this, right? Because like I grew up, you know, feeling, even though he lost his life, that he was heroic, right? In that moment. I didn't feel any, somebody asked me the other day, I'm trying to think who it was, you know, whether or not I resent him for going up the mountain and losing his life in that way. Not at all. It's never even crossed my mind to resent him. I see him as a hero. I also use him as a way of trying to be better, right? Because I think because if you've lost a loved one, I don't know if you have, but most people have, or at least will at some point in their lives. There's different ways of looking at death, and obviously people deal with it in their own way. My grieving of Michael probably came quite a lot later, with more maturity in my life, and I want to use that awful experience as a way to be better, do more, and in a strange way, even though he's dead, make him proud. Also, I don't talk about my brother James ever really, because he's a very private person, and I won't go into it. But James was a huge inspiration for me. When Michael died, James did all kinds of incredible things to raise money for the Michael Matthews Foundation. He ran a huge amount of marathons. He did the Marathon des Sables, cycled across America. And I grew up with that, watching him as well and thinking, wow, he's incredible. So I had it from both sides, when you're kind of 3/4 of the way through a bottle of whiskey, that kind of added to the shame of it all, that like, why my brother's so amazing, and why am I drunk? It's nice though to look back at it all and to see the development, and part of this Great Desert Challenge, the 30 and 30 thing, is exactly that. I think people talk about journeys and journeys through life, and this is a literal journey right through the desert, and I think there'll be incredible moments all the way through it, in which I'll be reminded of them and my past and the future, and it'll be a really reflective, incredible time that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And it's just all part of the journey.
Have you heard of the phrase post-traumatic growth?
No.
So we talk often about post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so much focus on the negative things that trauma brings us. But actually there's very few conversations about the fact that there's an awful amount of research and knowledge that points to the fact that people who've been through a trauma, they kind of have a fire inside them that the people who haven't can never even relate to. And I just wonder how much time you've spent thinking about the fact that maybe all of this actually probably does stem from the fire that was lit inside you when you were 10 years old and you were told that your brother had been lost.
Yeah, I think so. Mike is a constant in my life, right? Like, and there's not a day that goes by where I don't think of him. And I feel I've not heard of that, by the way, but I think it's very relevant. And I can see that. I think it's I think there's choice in life, isn't there? How you behave and how you react to certain things. Obviously, there's a degree of emotion, and emotions are hard to control, obviously, but making an effort to try to be better is something that everyone can do, right? And being able to recognize faults and to be able to not pass blame on something that you had no control over, I think is quite important. So I think it's quite easy in some people's position to say, well, my brother died, so this is how I'm going to behave from now on, and I think people who choose to do that is, fine, each to their own. But, I'd prefer to, as you say, take the trauma and try to grow. I don't think I'm the most successful guy in the world. I don't think I've, achieved more than the next person. It's nothing to do with that. I just feel really proud of where I am.
And was there a moment when you can recognise that you did actually feel proud of where you were?
I don't not specifically. No, I think getting ready for this event has been awesome for me, and really taking the time to prepare, right, and putting in the work. Like, it's similar to jiu-jitsu in a way. I don't know if either of you guys roll, but it's like I love jiu-jitsu, and it's the longer you spend on the mat, the better you become. The more time you spend in that gym or dojo, the better you will be at rolling. Running's pretty similar, right? You can lace up, you don't need any help from anyone. You go out, the more you run, the more you'll enjoy it, the better you'll be, the fitter you'll become. And I think having that satisfaction, it almost feels like this level of prep is something I wish I had known about before, even though everyone always tells you to be prepared for stuff. It's something I've never bothered with. Exams at school, never bothered. Previous ultras, never really bothered. This is like, I feel so satisfied with the position that we're in, that like, you know, were we to fail, we've done everything we can, I think. So that's kind of, I've not been in that position before.
I think it's great. And I think that realization that the more effort you put in, the more you get out of it is one of the greatest lessons we can teach our kids. But the sad thing is you have to allow them to not put the effort in and realize they get nothing back before they end up in this place here. I think it's great you're in such a brilliant place. I want to rewind a few years because we can't talk to you without talking about the Made in Chelsea period in your life. I'm just fascinated by what made you want to do that.
It's such a good question, isn't it? Because I look back at it.
Well, I've listened to a million interviews and no one's ever really said, like, why did you say yes to that?
Because at the time it felt original and quite fun. And it, to me, was only ever an interesting business opportunity. I never saw it as being particularly real or like a true reflection of myself. I saw it as an opportunity to work with a film crew, to become savvy around how to create television. Reality TV was on the rise. It wasn't what it is today. We were everywhere, you know, The Hills was wildly successful for MTV over in LA. I'd spent some time with Brody Jenner and Spencer Pratt out there. So I went to USC for a year, and I just couldn't understand the fame that they had. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like,
Did you love that?
I thought it was pretty exciting at the time. Yeah, I was 19 years old. They were getting paid $100K to turn up to a nightclub. I was like, what the fuck is this about? Like, honestly, I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. Right? They'd roll up to these nightclubs. Everyone screams their head off. They're getting paid these huge fees, money that I'd never even seen. And I was just like, I just thought, well, what makes them so special? And then kind of came back to the UK. It didn't exist here at all. Towie hadn't materialized. There was something called Living on the Edge, but I don't, anyway, whatever. And there was an opportunity, you know, that came out of, you know, we shot a pilot initially, me and some friends of mine, with a company called Pulse, called The Big Smoke, we wanted to call it. And it was shit, right? Nobody cared about it. We didn't even get a call back, I don't think. We were kind of, you know, it was just rubbish. And about 8 months goes by, and I got a call at Monkey Kingdom, and she said, you know, I'd love to chat to you about doing this show. It's called Chelsea Girls. You're the guy that wanted to do this thing with Pulse. Somebody got, you know, passed on your phone number, you know, come for a meeting. And I kind of came in and I was like, right, well, yeah, you know, if I'm going to be involved, then, you know, I'd like, you know, this and this, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, you get fucking nothing, mate. Like, you get 50 quid a day, and that's the way it's going to be. And you can either be involved or not. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take it.
I'll still be involved.
Yeah. Perfect. That sounds good.
Great negotiation. Hope you've got better at negotiating since then.
Yeah. In my eyes at the time, it was like pioneering a new genre of TV in the UK, you know, whatever.
You won a BAFTA. I mean, it was actually, to be honest, pioneering and a new genre. And
that's kind of how it felt.
Yeah.
The excitement of all of that.
And was there a moment where that changed? Because I think when we now think of Men in Chelsea, I mean, the question is just, well, how real was it? You know, like, was it you playing a role? Like, was there a moment where you thought, this is not quite what I
think the first couple of series, you know, were pretty real. And you'd turn up to a scene and you wouldn't know what's going on in the scene, and it'd be exciting and interesting and quite good fun because it was new to everyone. And then I think they, you know, like anything, they started to just dramatize normal situations. And I think people were confused in the cast as to what was real and what wasn't, because you do a scene with someone and they'd be really bent out of shape about something, and then like the cameras would stop and they'd be fine, and you was like, well, are you pissed off or are you not pissed off? I don't really get it. And that, you know, it was just a layer of kind of, it just became pretty, I'm not suggesting, by the way, that what you see in Made in Chelsea isn't real, but it's certainly elaborated and dramatized. And, you know, if I'm not getting the nod to Binky's boat party, I don't really give a shit in real life, you know, but it may be the case that you might have to care for the sake of a scene, or, you know.
Did you decide you had enough of it?
Yeah.
Just, I've had it. Why? When?
God, far too late in the process. You know, I'd already been villainized to death by this stage. And, you know, I'd taken to wearing only black clothes and being the bad boy on set. And, you know, it'd become part of the fun of being me in that show. And, you know, looking back at that now, I just feel like it's a bit of a shame, all of it, you know. kind of, I wish, you know, it's hard to say you regret certain things, right? Because Made in Chelsea obviously gave me a platform to do other stuff. I mean, people, regardless of what I've done, you know, finding Michael, raising lots of money for charity, podcasts with millions of listeners, all kinds of stuff, you know, no one cares about any of that. It's always Made in Chelsea, right? It's Spencer from Made in Chelsea. I just did a press morning all about the 1330 thing this morning, gave 6 interviews, and I had to say, you know, like, by the way, in the headline, like, is there any chance that you won't refer to me as, you know, Spencer Matthews from Made in Chelsea? Because it's actually not part of my identity. You know, I have nothing to do with the show. I left 12 years ago, you know, and I guarantee you that they will all do that anyway, right? And it's kind of, I don't know. It shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but it does.
Why does it, do you think?
I don't know. I don't love the show, and it's kind of.
Do you love the person you were on the show?
No, but
That might be why then.
Yeah, maybe. But also just like the show itself is just, it's not my kind of TV. As I said, like when we first started, I suppose you can work at a job that you don't love, right? But it's kind of, I don't know. It's not.
I don't think it's also a fair reflection of you as a person as well. Like, I don't know you especially well, but I know you a little. And I think you're a funny, great guy, good morals, work hard, great work ethic. I remember watching you on Made in Chelsea thinking, does this guy know he's being filmed?
Yeah.
Because he acts like a total bellend.
You sound like my brother. Yeah.
But then I'm now thinking, well, were you, like, you must have been comfortable with them filming you, acting and being like that. And then it leads me to think, well, are you kind of just immune to other people's opinion of you? Because if so, that's quite a powerful place to be.
Yeah, at the time, I definitely didn't care what people thought
How
of
do
me.
you get to that point in life?
I don't think that's a great place to be honest. Like, I think I've almost come out of that and like reverse engineered it a bit to not be affected by the opinions of others, but at least to take them into account. I think it's, you know, as a business owner and a podcast host and somebody who's, well, dare I say it, kind of in the public eye, I think to completely not care about people's opinions is a bit stupid, to be honest. I think you need to be at least aware of how you're perceived. Yeah. You know, I was again, you know, drunk for a lot of Made in Chelsea and, you know, on some rampage. I don't even really recognize the person that I was back then. And I thought it was really cool just not to give a shit about anything or anyone. And, you know, I'm just going to do whatever I want all of the time. And if you don't like it, then you can do one. And I just think that's a bit lame, to be honest. It's not really like, it's not how I'd encourage my boys to be, or my girl. But, you know, I just think it's a shame. It's just not, I think I felt like it was cool at the time. Yeah. And I just kind of just don't really think it's very cool anymore. So
it's good, you've grown as a person.
Yeah, I don't know. But I agree with you. Like, I really don't want to come across as a guy that's biting the hand that fed me, but I'm talking about my own behavior, not the show as a format. Like, I think the show does very well and always has done very well, and winning a BAFTA was awesome. I'm talking very much about myself in that role. Yeah. And I did see it as a role, by the way. I don't see it as real. But it's kind of, yeah, I think it, like my worst nightmare, I think, is my kids growing up and watching that stuff. I think it's just...
Yeah, that will happen.
I know. It's dire, though. It's really dire. And I'm going to have to explain to them that it was all fake or something.
Yeah, but you just said it was you playing a role, so I think that's the way to look at it. The unfortunate thing for you is you played a role, but the public thought it was real. Then you've got to spend the next 30 years unpicking that perception.
Yeah.
But there's echoes in what you're saying, Spencer, when we sat down with Vicky Patterson that had been through a similar experience on Geordie Shore, where she made decisions that she said, I've spent the next 10 years paying the consequences of it, in terms of walking into a room and having people judge her for actions that she did when she was in her early 20s. And the nature of those shows, as I understand them, is you're basically selling drama. If you're being kind to each other and treating each other with civility, that's boring television. Nobody wants to watch it.
Well,
But
the show would be cancelled.
yeah, so having the explosive row.
Its commodity is drama.
Yeah.
So even if you're an undramatic person or someone that hates confrontation, you will be thrust into confrontation and drama. And actually, you know, we were praised for creating drama.
But I can imagine though, like real life relationships that aren't just built on that constant drama must have felt quite dull or boring at that young age when you're walking away from the set where you've been rewarded and celebrated for the explosiveness, and then you're having to try and build relationships on treating each other with dignity and respect and kindness.
I think
how did you discern it?
Well, I'm a kind of, you know, I'm a naturally kind person.
Yeah.
Right. So like all of the explosive nonsense is bollocks in my eyes. It's not real. Right. So the huge rows, you know, in bars and stuff, it's just like I've never shouted at anyone in real life, you know, in my whole life. So it's all just rubbish, you know, in my eyes. But obviously people see it and they go, oh, wow, that's, you know, that's pretty wild. He's, you know, loose. But then there's all the drink as well, right? You arrive on set and you drink all day and then you shoot some scene with your ex. You know, once you've got 3 bottles of champagne in you, good luck.
So they encourage you to have a few drinks because it would make better TV?
Yeah. So.
But can you tell us about again, you hinted at it, that you think about the 3 eyes of a cycle of that. First of all, you're an innovator. So you're doing something that isn't out there on TV. Then you get lots of imitators that come along and copy it. And then you get lots of idiots that are late at the party and then try and jump on board when the train's already left the station. You said that you stayed for too long. And I'm wondering if you could tell us what you learned about knowing when to get out.
I had a sudden realization that I just had enough. Like, I left the show a few times and then negotiated a better contract and came back for more money. And you know, it was very transactional for me past a certain point. Like, none of it felt real to me. If they paid me properly, I'd come back and film another season. If they won't, I won't, you know, whatever. It just became business.
Okay.
Some people develop an attachment to the show where they feel like if they leave the show, that'll be it for them. I never felt that way, but that's just because, you know, going back to how I naturally am, right? I think stuff's possible. I think I can land jobs, you know, whatever, you know, might come across as arrogant. I'd prefer it to sound confident, right?
Optimistic.
Optimistic and confident. I've always been both those things. Very fine line between arrogance and confidence, though. You need to tread it carefully, eh? Yeah. I don't know. I think when your heart's not in something and you're kind of ploughing into it anyway, it might, you know, I think at least considering other options or pulling out of it could be. I mean, this isn't necessarily wise words of advice. It's just I'd had enough. You know, I wanted change. I wanted to come out. A good example of this, I'm sure you wouldn't mind me mentioning it, is Jamie Lang. Jamie stayed with the show for years after I left. And he would come to me and he would say, you know, his anxiety would be through the roof and like he'd just be miserable. And like, I'm not blaming the show, by the way, but he would be, you know, borderline depressed, you know, just upset, you know, constantly in these dramatic scenarios. And I said to him, just leave, mate. I said, just pack your bags and leave. Just like, get out of whatever contract you've got or see it through and just leave. Like you'll see your life just go from a storm cloud to a beautiful beach sunset. Like there's no drama in my life at all. Like I don't wake up with any drama, like, because, you know, I have a beautiful loving wife who's my best mate and kids, and, you know, obviously that wasn't around then, but that show thrusts you purposefully into confrontational corners with created drama. So the minute you leave it, it's kind of like you feel a huge weight lifted. Yeah. And I just don't think it's that healthy, to be honest. It's just a bit. You're fine when you're young and up for it and you kind of understand it, but the minute you lose control of it and you become the subject of, you know, online hatred, as an example, it can be a lot for people.
The next natural question is, how do you go from the arrogant, self-centered, conceited, made in Chelsea guy that thinks the world revolves around him to being this person? I assume the answer is stopping drinking.
Yeah, stopping drinking, a beautiful, great wife who's, you know, a strong character who, you know, I just respect enormously. Like, I went through life pretty much only caring about my opinion, right? And just like, I'm right. And to be honest, if you've got a different opinion to me, then you're wrong, was me for alcoholic teenage 20s. And, Vogue really, without even trying too hard, really shaped me into a much better person, in my opinion. I just think the desire to want to be better for someone is always helpful, isn't it? Like, I'd never had that before. I always just, if something didn't feel right, it would naturally separate. Whereas if there was ever a period with Vogue where something didn't feel right, I would want to fix that. And it's just the first time that I'd felt that.
Is there anything that she's ever said to you that really resonated, that led you to change a belief or a behaviour or a habit?
She probably won't like me saying this, but she told me once that my drinking habits reminded her of her dad. And her father was a very heavy drinker. And I didn't like that at all. It bothered me a lot.
Why?
Because she meant it in a way that was supposed to hurt, I think. Even though she loves her father enormously, like, she's her father's biggest. Her father's dead now. But she said it in a way to make. She knew that I wasn't a fan of that side of his nature, and she pinned that on me as being just like him, essentially. And by the way, by the sounds of things, he was an amazing guy. Lots of people absolutely love this guy, but I'd never met him. But that side of him, in the way that it had always been reported back to me or told to me, or stories of him, sounded to me like he could have done with drinking less as a parent, and I just didn't like it. I found that to be it was quite cutting. I just found the whole thing to be a bit okay. All you've ever told me is how big a boozer this guy was, and I don't really want to be in that camp.
So how do you go from that to stopping drinking? What was the moment where you just decided to put the drink away?
I went through the best part of a bottle of whiskey to myself one night towards the end of it feeling very problematic. This is around a time that walking the dogs felt like an enormous chore that I didn't want to bother. I would lie sometimes about having walked the dogs. Like, that's how bad it was. I'd be at home just like drinking. I would time calls with certain people earlier in the day to make sure that I wasn't too drunk to take the call. Like, literally, it was pretty bad. And I remember just thinking, I got myself to bed that night in quite a tricky way. I was like bouncing into walls and my head hit the pillow, and I just thought, this has to stop. Like, I simply can't be getting into bed in this way. And had epiphany is a bit of a strong word, isn't it? But woke up the following day and just thought, right, I simply cannot carry on like this. And one way that I begin to change is I tell people who are close to me that I'm going to do something, and then I feel the kind of guilt if I don't do it, type of thing. So I told Vogue, told my brother, told my mum, all of whom just didn't believe a word of it. I literally said, like, right, okay, I'm done with drinking.
Had you told them that before?
They would probably say yes, but to me, this was different. So I'd never announced, like, right, I'm never drinking again before, but I may have said, like, I'm going to dial it back or whatever. But like, this to me felt like a very different time. And yeah, just stopped. After about 4 days or 3 days, I felt my whole life change. Like, it was unbelievable. It was like if I were a Ferrari, it was like I'd been driving for the last 10 years with the handbrake on, and like just fighting against all this power, right? And literally just like just flew off, right? And like it felt, the difference was just mad, and I just became hooked on that. I loved it. Like, just started lifting weights, and went straight into developing Clean Co. Like, cause after like a week of not drinking, I was just like, okay, like, come on, like, what can we be doing? What can I do? Big gap in the market, in my opinion, for non-alcoholic spirits. Didn't exist really. And, you know, started going down that route. But yeah, like, it was a huge change, and I feel delighted and very, you know, fortunate to be where I am now with all of that.
How happy are you now?
I couldn't be happier, I don't think.
Really?
Yeah. No, I know, and it's an annoying thing to say, obviously, because I don't always feel this way, but at the moment, I feel it'd be hard to feel better. And I think it's because I have an awesome wife that supports me. I've got healthy kids, and it's you know, we're more in love now and happier now than we were when we first met, which I think is a beautiful place to be after 7 years of being with someone. And that is quite rare, maybe. I don't know. I don't spend too much time inquiring into other people's relationships, but it's certainly kind of how it should be, right? That you grow together as a couple. And yeah, I think we're quite lucky because we've both changed. We've come quite a long way, probably more so me than her. She didn't have the necessity to change quite as much as I did. But I think where we are now is this really powerful, equal place where we both love and respect each other and work really well together, instead of me feeling like I need to play catch up or be a certain way so that she feels a certain thing. I think there's mutual love and respect there that feels awesome, and hopefully we continue to grow.
Good luck.
Thank you, man.
Quick fire questions. The 3 non-negotiable behaviours that matter the most to you.
Working hard.
Great.
Being kind. And staying respectable. Like putting a good foot forward for your children.
What's your greatest strength and your biggest weakness?
Greatest strength is probably that I believe in myself fully. Biggest weakness is I can be overly optimistic and sometimes miss the detail. So, you know, if I'm looking at something, I kind of tend to only see the good in it. Business opportunity, that's going to be the next, you know, and I love it so much that I'm almost invested completely before doing any kind of DD or anything like that. And biggest weakness, I can be quite selfish as well sometimes. I'll put myself first.
Even now?
Yeah. I'll put myself first, you know, ordinarily. So I'll wake up, I'll look after myself. I get up before everyone else, but I'll look after myself, blah, blah, blah. I'll make sure that, you know, I get myself to the gym, you know, early in the morning, 3 times, you know, which I don't actually believe is a terrible thing. You know, it's not like I disregard everyone else, but I will look after myself. I can be selfish. So that's one thing that if I could naturally care about other people more and do it first, I would like to add that.
Best bit of advice you've ever received?
I was speaking to a very prominent CEO of a huge, very famous company. I won't name the guy just because I don't know if he would appreciate being named or not. But he said there's a big difference between working hard and making a difference. And he said, always be conscious of making a difference, which I thought was quite interesting because obviously you can come into a big role and just do the job. But he specifically looks to try to drive change and making a difference in his work. And I thought that was quite interesting. But I mean, best piece of advice. That things are fleeting as well. Like, you know, if you're feeling a certain way, it's probably in your minds, in your head, that people can't see the way you're feeling. It's quite easy to get pent up in something and feel like you're in a kind of fishbowl with it, that it's everyone's reality when actually it might just be yours. So to try and remove yourself, you know, out of whatever it is you might be feeling and just generally have a better overview of kind of, you know, situations.
And finally,
what's your one golden rule for living a high performance life?
Get some proper sleep as well. You know, I made that mistake a lot for years. Just I wouldn't value sleep at all. And I think if you are in a position where you can prioritize good sleep, it makes a huge difference, whether or not you're a professional athlete, amateur athlete, businessman, whatever. and also make time for loved ones and family. I think, I interviewed Robin Sharma, who I think is phenomenal and so well versed around, any question you throw at him, he just gives you these beautiful answers that are so deep, that you can take with you and ponder for the rest of the day. And it's great. Something that I can't do, but he can. And he told me that, he coaches all these billionaires and, they're so wealthy, but, loads of them have just lost their kids and their wives and their families, and they're alone. They're literally just alone, and they're not happy. And, and he, I think prioritizing your time well is just really important, regardless of how far you want to reach. You're never going to get there if you're not managing your time properly.
Brilliant. What is the phrase? Some people are so rich, some people are so poor, all they have is money.
There you go.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, man.
Pleasure.
Thank you. It's been
Thank
a
you.
privilege. Thanks, Pads.